Hello, everyone. Thank you all for attending. Originally, we planned to hold this event entirely in person. We altered the event structure in response to the pandemic by streaming the event on Zoom as well, so we could keep the numbers down, so we could socially distance somewhat. I want to thank Leanne Chambers from LSUS and John and Luke from River City Streaming for helping us spearhead that effort of bringing it online in such a short amount of time. Without their expertise and support, there would be no Zoom component. As it is, we have two audiences, a physical one and a virtual one. We have revised this event to facilitate interactions between these two audiences. However, we are aware that this is a work in progress. At the end of the event tonight, we will ask all of you to take 5 minutes to complete a survey that will help us improve the format of future events and communicate the value of the humanities to local, state, and federal funding agencies. For those of you attending in person, we will provide a physical survey. For those of you joining us via Zoom, we have entered a link to the Google survey in the chat box. We will also share the link to the survey on the last slide of the PowerPoint presentation. Tonight's event is part of a spring lecture series sponsored by the National Endowment for the Humanities, titled From Horror to Heroism, the Evolution of War Remembrance. We have placed the lecture series schedule in your folder at the table. For those joining by Zoom, we have entered my contact information into the chat box. You can email me and I will respond and give you whatever you need. In terms of the lecture series, this is the first event. At each event in the lecture series, an LSUS student veteran will lead a conversation about the tension between the experience of going to war and the narratives we tell about war. One of the requirements for the grant is that we discuss a war prior to 1900 and a war that occurs after 1900. We have decided to focus on the Civil War and the War on Terror for two reasons. In terms of the Civil War, Shreveport has a complicated history which continues to divide citizens, as protests surrounding the Confederate statue in front of the downtown courthouse reveal. We will come together later this month to discuss this tension and contemplate solutions. As for the War on Terror, we live in a military community whose members continue to deploy in support of the war effort. We should talk about that reality in all of its complexity. As for tonight's event, it is the first of two focusing on the Civil War. I do not want to reveal too much because the presenter has worked hard to create an experience for all of you. But I do want to offer 2 points. First, this is a conversation about war. We will be discussing mature content that is not suitable for young children. I offer that mainly for the people on Zoom. I don't see any children in the room here, but on Zoom, if you have children around, you might want to join us for a future event because there's going to be mature content. Second, I encourage you to keep in mind the project's organizing principle. We hope that this event will help you better appreciate the tension between the horrors of the Civil War and the narratives we tell about the Civil War. To help us do this important work, I would like to introduce our speaker, Jason Tipler. Jason is originally from a small town in Tennessee. He joined the military in 2003 when he was 17 years old and spent almost 9 years in the military. Due to injuries, he was medically retired in 2012. Fast forward 8 years, and he is now in his second year at college at LSUS, where he majors in criminal justice with a concentration in security studies. He hopes to get a job in counterterrorism once he graduates. So please join me to welcome Jason.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming out tonight. As Dr. Heroism said, my name is Jason Tipler, and I'm retired from the United States Air Force. Tonight, we were discussing the Civil War, how the Civil War is remembered in popular culture, and one major part that has been forgotten. I want you to leave here with a better understanding of the difference between what you want to see and hear at war and what the actual reality is. To do this, I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what Dr. Reefson said. We have two audiences, one virtual and one physical. For those physically attending this event, there's a folder at your seat, has the schedule of future town hall events in it, a flyer for an oral history project with veterans of Dr. Reefson, and a copy of the speech that we were discussing tonight, and some paper you can use to respond to tonight's text. And on this final point, I want to be clear in beginning our conversation, there are no right or wrong opinions, and I want everyone to feel comfortable expressing their ideas. For those of you joining us via Zoom, we have included Dr. Reefson's email address in the chat box. If you'd like a schedule of future events or a physical copy of the text we were discussing, email him and he'll get those to you. In the meantime, we'll be showing you text that we are discussing through PowerPoint slides. I recommend that you get a piece of paper or open up a document so that you can write your ideas down. Periodically, I'm going to come to you for comments and questions. We're going to try to do this both physical and via Zoom. You should use the chat box to offer any commentary. In this way, we hope to create a hybrid experience in which physical and virtual audiences interact. That being said, there's always room for improvement. And as Dr. Reefson mentioned, at the end of this forum, we'll be handing out a brief survey where you can offer your suggestions and comments on how to improve future events. The last slide of the presentation will also provide the link for a survey. Dr. Reefson will donate $5 to a local organization within the veteran community for every survey that's completed. One final point before we get started, tonight's event contains adult content that may not be suitable for children. For those of you on Zoom, keep that in mind as you may have young ones around. I want to begin tonight's conversation by discussing Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. and his 1895 Memorial Day speech, The Soldier's Faith. Holmes lived from 1841 to 1935. During the Civil War, he served as an officer in the Union Army for 3 years, and he was wounded several times. And he also was a writer and attended Harvard Law School. And in December of 1903, in part because of the speech we'll be discussing tonight, he was nominated by President Theodore Roosevelt for a seat on the U.S. Supreme Court. He served on the court until he was 90 years old, and he died just 2 days prior to his 94th birthday. Holmes delivered his 1895 speech, The Soldier's Faith, at Harvard University 30 years after the end of the Civil War. Holmes warned his listeners that the nation was becoming weak and obsessed with material possessions, which, in his opinion, promoted apathy, laziness, and moral weakness. In the second half of his speech, Holmes then offered war and military service as a social remedy, believing that combat promoted selflessness, perseverance, fortitude, and courage, qualities that Holmes valued above all others. Now, we don't have time tonight to read the entire speech, but I am going to provide you with 2 quotes that are emblematic of the speech overall tone and message. After you have read these quotes, I would like you to pick one and use the pen and paper at your table to write down your thoughts and feelings. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do this. If you finish before the time is up, I would ask that you write on the second quote as well. Again, for those of you on Zoom, we will be sharing 2 quotes via PowerPoint. Please begin. We'll give everyone a couple more minutes to finish up their writings. All right, it seems like most people are done. Those of you still writing, please continue your thoughts. Um, these are real powerful quotes, and I'm looking for some feedback from y'all. If anybody has a quote, actually, let's start with Zoom. Does Zoom have anybody who wants to share? All right, anybody in the audience? Would you like to share your quote and your thoughts and feelings? If you do, just come up to the mic here.
Hi, Jason. How are you doing?
Good, sir. How are you?
I was looking at kind of the religious vocabulary that appears in this first quote. I thought it was interesting. They mentioned that there's a collapse of creeds, so maybe some loss of faith in maybe traditional background, but there's still some type of faith they mentioned that's true and adorable that would lead people to know that they're going into something that could cost them their life.
Right.
And so I was wondering where that faith may be placed now. So some of the questions I had here is that faith, placed in political leaders, the news, our family histories with the military, or even propaganda. So where is that faith if it's not in maybe a spiritual background? Where is the faith that leads, folks to put their lives on the line placed these days?
I think it's different for everybody. Thank you for the question. But I think it depends on the person, and it's different for everyone. Mine was based off of family tradition, and as far as the faith goes, I trusted what my leaders told me and just kind of did what I was told. I've met others that, they felt like, their deity was protecting over them and would take care of them. But I think it's different for everyone. It could be, whether it be something that's of faith to them or just hope, even that sometimes I think plays a factor in it. And it's the same as like people that want to join the military. Everybody has a different reason. And I just think everybody has their own way, their own way to deal with the war. I had a lot of time to think about that, and over there you try not to think about it. You try not to think about what's the end. You just try to make it to the next day. At least I did. But thank you for your question. Does anybody have any feedback on that question that he asked? Anybody got anything for that? No? Anybody else want to share their quote? What they wrote?
What's going on, Jason?
Hey, Chad.
Hey, so I'm looking at the first quote, like the blindly accepted duty. Like that whole thing is it kind of goes back to what he was saying. Like there's the faith and the duty, but there's also like uncertainty, the cause of which he doesn't understand, and a plan of campaign which he has little notion, or tax to which he doesn't see the use. It just seems like it's adorable to like throw their lives away for something that they don't really know what they're doing. And I think that there's a lot of implication, because a lot of people do that today. And it's just kind of wild that this is still kind of happening. You don't have to understand it, you just have to do.
Yeah.
And that's just what makes a soldier, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it is weird that he uses the word adorable to describe like throwing your life away. And as far as like, they don't see the use of it. Yeah, most of the missions that we've been on, I'm sure that you can agree, we don't know the end game. We just know that what's going on right now, and we don't know the big picture. And a lot of times we don't need to know the big picture, but we do this blindly accepted duty because that's what we signed up for. And it's always thrown me off. I've been working on this for 8 months, and every time I see the word adorable, it just throws me off that he would use such language when you're describing something that's so horrific.
Yeah, it's a strange vocabulary for sure.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Thank you. Did anybody pick the second quote?
So, echoing off of what y'all just said about how, like blindly duty, like accepting duty blindly. And on the second quote, it talks about that the book for the Army is a war song, not a hospital sketch. It's not well for soldiers to think about wounds. So they know what they're asking for the soldiers to do, like to go into a slaughterhouse blindly. But tell them not to worry about that. Don't fear it. It's okay. Like it's an honor to die, but I don't know how there's honor whenever you're doing something blindly and you don't even know what the meaning is behind it.
Yeah. It is a tricky one. And I don't know, this was written long ago, so I don't know how the world was back then. And I can only speak on what I've experienced. And, for the second quote, that's what our commanders used to give us before we go out. This is the hoorah, that's, charge forward no matter what the price may be. And it's hard to understand why he would put things in this context and write it like this. But I still believe even today, we still follow these same, exactly what he's saying. We still do the same thing today. It's no different.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to share their opinions, what they picked? No? All right, well, thank you all for who did participate. We're gonna push on forward towards the next thing. This next one is gonna be, it's gonna make you talk, I feel. I wanna remind you all of the project's overall title, From Horror to Heroism, the Evolution of War Remembrance. We have discussed the heroic version of the Civil War, the version that became popular in the public's imagination during the 1890s, 3 decades after the last shot was fired. But now I want to pivot to the war as it was experienced in the 1860s. To do that, I'll be unveiling the photography situated around the room for us to discuss. For those of you on Zoom, we will cycle through the images, providing 10 seconds for each image, and then we will continue cycling through the images until everyone in the physical audience has finished inspecting the images. As you will notice, there are numbers in the upper left-hand corner of the slides. When you type your response for these images in the chat box, please remember to include the slide number so that we can refer to it during our discussion. For those of you in the room, there is a worksheet in the left flap of your folder behind Holmes's speech. Use this paper to record your thoughts about an image or two that you find particularly troubling or memorable. In order to maintain social distancing, we're going to conduct this part of the talk by rows. Each row will get 3 minutes to inspect the pictures, and if you need more, we can adjust that later. We'll start with the back row and move forward. Dr. Reepsum will notify you when your row can get up and move around. Once you have inspected the images, return to your seat and write down your thoughts, not just about the image, but try to put that image in context with what's Holmes has written. And we're going to go ahead and start that now.
morning or this afternoon, earlier today.
When now stacking up. Yeah, I mean, there's so many I mean, I think to what level we have to. The time is huge. The card is huge. There's no going back. You know, we have like 80.
That conversation doesn't always happen. So like civilian folks have their ideas about war, military. We don't even have like first-hand or second-hand experience. We're trained to just be like, here's a, like, just gonna throw this phrase out. It's like, feels better for me, probably not for them.
For mine, I chose number 7 as an avid horse lover. When we think about the casualties of war, we often think about soldiers and the lives they willingly laid down. And not so often, we think about the innocent, the ones who were never supposed to be there, that were never supposed to die, and yet they're casualties of war as well.
Which picture did you
Number
focus
7.
on? Number 7? Yeah. Talking about like the horse,
Yeah.
and then everybody else that didn't need to die.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to explain how horrible it is, because a lot of people, my understanding of the Civil War and the reasons why it's caused, like I'm not going to get into that. Everybody has their own the view of what it was really about. But like a lot of these people, they were just fighting for their home, and I feel like a lot of them that went after it, they didn't need to die. All these people didn't need to die. You know, you can get along with everyone, and even today, like you go to war and you watch your best friend die that you've known for your entire, growing up your entire life, and why did he die? And that goes back to one of the things about the big picture of the military and the big picture of why you're doing it. Like, we don't know the big picture. For all I know, he died just because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He may have had a different view when he died. But I agree that a lot of it is senseless and it didn't need to happen.
Right. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I chose number 12. Yeah, and I chose him because we've always been told that POWs have been treated terribly, but I've never really seen a picture of a POW and the condition that they were in. And from the looks of him, you would think he'll be a victim of a Holocaust or from a genocide. But we sometimes forget that that the war and the savagery of war is just as felt just as strongly. Sorry about that. Out of the battlefield and behind enemy lines than not just on the battlefield. Yeah, you can see his bones. He has no muscle. It's just, yeah, it's shocking.
Hey, how are y'all? I chose image number 3. And the clustering of the nameless and faceless corpses to me clearly illustrates what these soldiers are. And that's nameless and faceless bodies that are wasted for a cause. This image makes me feel that these soldiers are fairly unchanged from what they were before they died. Mm-hmm. Mm. Right. They were worthless. Mm. Thank you.
Hey, it's me again. Hey, can you pull up number 2? I mean, this kind of speaks for itself. I mean, this is a kid, and it's just hard to look at because, I mean, this is fresh. I mean, this is right after what happened to him. And to go back to Oliver Wendell Holmes's speech, like, he was just blindly following orders. He didn't know what was going on, and now this is somebody's son, you know, this is somebody's friend or brother probably, and this is just a really powerful one for me, you know. Yeah. Like, you can't get rid of that. You can't like that's the truth, you know. And it's tough because, like, it was just Americans doing this to each other, you know. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what side you're on. Like, it's a kid. Yeah. That's all I got.
So back to number 3. I kind of thought that she had a wonder analyzation of it, so I just want to kind of elaborate on kind of what I thought. So to me, it looks like the soldiers, after they died, going back to what Oliver Wendell Holmes said, they're kind of being, they kind of threw away their lives. Like, after they died as soldiers, that was kind of a quote that was from there. So throw away their lives. And they're no longer soldiers anymore. They pretty much burned their bodies, and now they're not even picking them up themselves like the soldiers aren't. Because now whenever I think of a soldier, I think of, like, you never leave somebody behind. Like, that's a main thought, I guess. And looking at this, it looks like everybody was left behind. You threw away everything. You burned their body, and you don't even pick up the pieces. It looks like there's African American slaves digging shallow graves for these men and burying the burnt bodies now in those shallow graves. It just doesn't look like anybody wanted to even handle the gruesome image that the soldiers were going through. So.
Hi there, my name is Janie. I chose number 11, picture 11. And I chose that because I looked at the first excerpt here where it said that faith is true and adorable, which leads a soldier to throw away his life in obedience to a to a blindly accept duty with little understanding. And if nothing else, he was not alone. Um, he had company, and in a situation where it's a war, that becomes your family. And that's what I thought about, that even in with his injuries and everything that was going on, maybe in his mind or in his life or world, he wasn't alone in this moment. And he was alive to see it, but he wasn't alone.
Hello, my name is Trudy.
One second. There we go. Got it back. Just real quick, let me, for this, but you're absolutely right. Even in today's military, like my brothers and sisters, I would die for them. And we fought together and we trained so much together. We were a family. You know, I'm not sure how this goes down. I know that he lost his feet, if I'm not mistaken, similar to another image, basically after infections. And if you didn't die from injuries, like if you didn't die from like a sudden death, like you got shot in the head or something like that, if you got even a cut, they didn't know about germs and like the factor that they caused back then, and it just festers, and they ended up, you know, losing limbs, or they would die. A lot of Civil War military died because of infections, believe it or not. But you're absolutely right. There is a comfort in sometimes in having someone there with you, even if you're going through some, you know, the most horrible thing you can imagine. At least you have somebody with you, and that's sometimes comforting. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
I just felt like this is important that you did this tonight and the other 5 sessions as well, because this is educating those that didn't realize all this was going on. And I feel like education is very important. If we understand one another better, then maybe we won't tend to go and fight one another. Okay. I, I feel like we should communicate with one another more, try to listen to the other side, and have empathy for what they're saying and what they're feeling, because that could be you. And then if we all felt that we could listen to others, maybe we wouldn't be so anxious to go and fight. Okay? Use your words. Don't use your fist and your guns and all that. Words are very effective. We've all had our feelings hurt, but we can also build one another up. That's it. Have a good night.
Is this, there we go.
Give us just 1 second.
Test it again.
Here's these. I don't know how much they have. Let me see if it's that. Once you get it back. Check 1, 2.
Thank you. Awesome. Everybody good? Everybody good? Okay, awesome. To you, ma'am, I understand. You know, if wars could be fought and won with words, obviously I'd have 7 friends alive today. I can't say whether, you know, words are the answer or guns are the answer. I can only do what, you know, what I felt was needed at the time. But I do agree. I mean, obviously, I think it'd be the perfect world. There would be no violence. You know, we could settle everything with the words, and maybe we can get to there one day. Unfortunately, I don't see that happening anytime soon, even though how great it would be, you know, for that to be able to do that. And unfortunately, also, a lot of American jobs rely on the war, because there's always somebody that has to make the bombs, that has to make the planes, that has to make the ammunition, that has to make, you know, the parts. But I do agree that if everything could be finished with, you know, if wars could be fought with words instead of rifles, that'd be great. And maybe one day we'll get to there, hopefully. And thank you for the comment. Would anyone else like to share a picture that they picked or what they said? No? No? Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
So I picked number 6. I thought this one was interesting to me because it kind of shows the actual prosthetics. My dad would joke that, like, people, or I say joke, he would say that people who like lost limbs, they didn't really have the medical advances to do prosthetics. So I always find this picture kind of fascinating because it kind of proves him wrong. And I spent a lot of my childhood doing that. But it shows what I guess would be like the basis of a prosthetic. So like the start of that sort of technology. And that's why I consider that interesting.
It is fascinating how far we've come, huh? Like, to, you know, nowadays you have titanium and carbon fiber. And I'm sure that was not very comfortable or very easy to maneuver, you know, just hinges. But, you know, and that just shows you the, you know, I think I put on there, yeah, scurry and gangrene cause him to lose his limbs, you know, just infections. But yeah, the prosthetics have come a long way, and that's just, it is crazy sometimes to look back that long ago and to see what they used and how they, you know, like I said, that could be comfortable or fun. Oh yeah, for those on Zoom that may not have heard her, she was saying that you know, he may have came from money because poor soldiers didn't have the money to provide for, you know, to be able to buy prosthetics. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm not sure, you know, if it was military issued or if it was, you know, how it came about, but that is very true. You know, for people that don't come from money, they're not going to be able to, you know, afford these advances in science, even as antique as they may be at the time. You know, it's simple. And I can't imagine how much those cost back then, but I know I probably couldn't afford it today. Would anybody else like to share their picture? You back again, huh, bro?
Third time's a charm. So I just want to point out that this guy was also at Anderson while 12 and 13. They were in the same place at more likely the same time. So if you want to like scroll between those and just kind of have that, like, I think that would be, like, that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like, how was this guy malnourished, probably just beaten and treated like lower than a human, and this guy's getting prosthetic limbs?
Yeah.
You know?
The only thing I can say to that would be the guy that has the prosthetic limbs, obviously he's older, so maybe he's put on some weight since then. Because I don't know if that's a picture.
That's not a picture of him like
I'm not sure, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure, but I know that's from Anderson Field Prison. But could you imagine, though, going on that point, imagine he looked like this, and he eventually got to that. You know, that's a long process as well.
Yeah,
maybe
it's an
he
interesting
did.
thing.
Yeah, you know, maybe he did look like this, because I know a lot of people at Andersonville did. And that's just horrible. You know, I'm not going to compare, but you know, I don't go a day without eating. Like I'm not a nice person, and I can't imagine this. Like I would be. I don't know how you don't get sick. Like how do you not just give up at some point? You know what I mean? So I give it to them for not giving up and fighting through and pulling through. It's amazing. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Can you go back to number 6? So this guy caught my eye because I'm short. So this guy caught my eye because, for one, the way he's sitting upright. He seems proud. He's got his medal on his chest, you know, and he has his other medal, his prosthetic legs, you know, and the pose is strange to me because it almost seems monstrous. It's uncanny. You know, you're looking at this and you're like, whoa, why does this guy have 4 legs? You know, and I think that really kind of speaks to the monstrousness of what he's experienced. So thoughts on that?
I agree. I 100% agree. He does, and he also has that kind of look of like, I made it. Like, so what? I got prosthetic legs. Check me now. Like, I look cool. Maybe. I don't know what he's thinking. But like, he gives off that persona of like, excuse my French, but I'm a badass. Like, look, you know, I made it to the end, and I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of what I did. And like you said, he has the medal. He obviously did something. Mm-hmm. So I agree, though. He does have that look. Yeah. I could only hope that if I was in the position, I'd have the same.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. For those on Zoom, she was just stating that she also believes he came for money because of, you know, being able to have a picture taken, you know, back then was obviously a labor-intensive process, very expensive. And, you know, it's a nice setup, you know, with the chair and everything else. So obviously it seems like he had the money. So you know, you're absolutely right as far as that goes. Anyone else like to offer their comments? Yeah, she was just saying that, you know, the other picture was a private. He could have been an officer. Unfortunately, whenever you look at, we got a lot of these pictures from the Library of Congress archives, and there's very little detail. Like, luckily, sometimes we can get some more detail on them, but a lot of it's just, you know, there's no information there for us really. So we just kind of use what we got. But, you know, at least some of them, we kind of get a context of it, but he could have very well been an officer. They obviously get paid a lot more than enlisted. I can attest to that. Anyone else? Everybody's good? Everybody's good? All righty. Thank you all for coming out tonight and participating in this forum. I'd like you to leave with 2 ideas. First, the purpose of this forum was to shine a light on the horrors of war that are often masked by subsequent commemorations in popular culture, and to show you a more realistic version of war. The Civil War was horrible, but now it's glorified and celebrated every year. If you ever visit any of these sites, I'd ask that you please remember those who died, and you know, they had a family just like you and I. So just take a minute, you know, when you go to these sites. I've been to a couple, and you know, in the beginning, I never really thought about that. And it wasn't until this project made me really open my eyes up and realize that I was missing one of the biggest parts of it. You know, the second thing I'd like you to take from this is, and something you should remember, in his speech, Holmes nostalgically reimagined past hardships more positively. He transformed war's brutality and violence into something glorious. This is something we as a nation persistently do. We promote narratives that reimagine martial violence as necessary and at times magnificent. This reimagining of the past denies combatants the reality of their wartime experience and instills a false sense of war for future generations. It is something that we should be careful about doing. I would now like to take a minute and thank Dr. Reepsum for helping me out with this, Nick and my classmates, thank you all. It's been a pleasure over the last 8 months doing this project with you. That concludes my, my meeting tonight. I'm going to hand out a brief survey for you to fill out and a small packet for you to take home. Chad, he will be doing the next forum and he'll be discussing the Civil War monuments. Again, thank you all for coming out tonight, and please fill out the survey. And also on Zoom, you can go to that last link and you can fill out your survey there. Thank you all.